You can have the nicest mics, the nicest speakers, and the nicest converters out there. But if your room's not set up and treated properly, you're not going to be able to accurately hear what's going on in your mix. A lot of people don't know I'm also an acoustician as well as a producer. Audio waves propagate in three main ways. They reflect, they absorb, and they diffuse. Before installing any treatment, you need to get your speaker placement and your listening position set right. Now, to accurately do this, you'll need to hire an acoustician to come in with a measurement microphone that has a flat frequency response, put it in the listening position while playing sine sweeps out of your speakers to measure how modes are stacking or canceling in that listening position. That's all really complex and expensive, but there is an alternative. Check it out. So this is a software called REW, or Room EQ Wizard, and inside of it, it has a room simulator. And you can put in the dimensions of your studio, length, width, and height, and also where your speaker placement is, your listening position, and your sub position. And after entering that, it is going to give you an EQ response chart, or an IR, of your room. As you can see, just in making little tiny shifts in the sub position, you are going to alter your phase relationships drastically in your room. Likewise, moving the speaker position or the listening position obviously is going to alter the frequency response of what you're hearing in the listening position. The idea with this is that your head should be at the top of an equilateral triangle between your two speakers. So again, this isn't meant to replace actually measuring a room, but it will give you a general sense as to how modes are summing or canceling in your room. And if you're having low mid buildup or you're having a lot of high brash responses from your room, you can move your listening position or your speaker placement or your sub around to get a sense for how that's going to change the IR of your room. Now, in an absolutely ideal studio environment, that response chart would be a flat line, but that's not realistic unless you're in an anechoic chamber. So the idea is to flatten out that EQ response chart as much as possible. Start with the largest modes. We treat buildups in different parts of the frequency spectrum in different ways with acoustics. For example, if you're having a lot of boominess in your room or bass buildup, that's where we'd go to the corners and install bass traps because that's where bass is going to sum in a room. Maybe you're having a lot of low mid or mids buildup in your studio. That's where you might want to go for a broadband panel that's a little thicker, that's going to catch a wider band of frequencies than just highs. Whereas, generally speaking, the thinner the panel you use, the higher the frequencies it's going to be used to attenuate. Which makes sense if you think about it, because the lower the frequency, the longer the wavelength of that sound is, which is going to create more energy essentially, and it's going to need a thicker panel to catch that frequency. Now, why bass traps in the corners? Well, sub-frequencies generally are omnidirectional, meaning they travel in all directions. And then low mids, mids, and highs tend to be directional, meaning they travel in one direction. Now, there's a lot of factors playing into this, mainly speaker size, obstructions, cabinet, etc. But generally speaking, above 100 to 200 hertz, sound ceases to be omnidirectional and becomes directional. So traveling the path of least resistance, all the bass winds up in the corners because they're traveling in all directions. You've probably noticed this if you've ever stood at the back corner of a venue while a loud band is playing. The intelligibility of the vocals goes away altogether and it just turns into bass soup, like... Now, if you take a laser pointer and you set it on top of your speakers, wherever that laser lands is called your first point of reflection. This is one of the places where diffusion makes sense, to disperse the energy of that initial point of reflection to the other panels in the room. Whereas if we have an absorbing panel in the first point of reflection, we might be asking a little too much of that panel. Another thing to consider in setting up your room is the clap test. This can be recorded on your phone, doesn't need to be advanced. But stand in your listening position and clap. Record the clap, bring the clap into your DAW, and analyze how long the decay is. Typically speaking, in a high-fidelity recording environment, you want that decay to be less than 500 milliseconds or half a second. This is also known as the reverberation time of a room, or the RT of a room. So this is a real quick and dirty video of a deeply vast world of acoustics. Honestly, I'll take a really well-treated room over nice converters and speakers any day. Drop a like and follow for more stuff like this. Also DM me if you need help with your acoustics.